Hi, everybody. Okay, so well, let's start from the beginning. I think you know what is COTS software. Who's from you knows what is behind the COTS software? Okay, so COTS software is software from the shelf. It's very often this term used in public projects, because if we have some COTS software, so software from the shelf, we are not testing this software on all aspects of it. But it's also referring to the things that we are buying in shops or from the companies. So, for example, Windows is also a COTS. Okay, but let's go a little bit. It's not. Okay, so who am I? Like you previously saw, I'm working within testing from 18 years. And well, I touched every kind of testing functionality or testing things that you could imagine within testing. So from test designing, test case execution, automatization, analysis, architecture, test management, test team management. So let's go further. What is COTS? COTS is something that you are buying from the shop. It's something ready. You are not thinking about how it's working. It's like here. It's like vacuum cleaner that you are buying from a shop. In opposite, open source is something that you are building on yourself from scratch, basing on your requirements. And basing on those requirements, you're adding additional elements to this technological stack of your automatization tests. So what is the stage? The stage is that it was in company that was on the client side. So we got lots of various vendors and suppliers that were giving to us software that we were introducing within our company. Our main, we were not earning from IT, we were doing something else. So lots of external suppliers, but we had also few internal ones, because this was, and this is, international organization. What else? Various technologies. We used lots kind of technologies from very, very old, even 40 years old, to very modern one. Everything was depending on the business needs. What else? Strategy of the company was saying that everyone knows how to do business on their side. It was also on the IT department. So they were not forcing us to use agile methodologies or V-model or, I don't know, even RUP. Everyone could do it as he wanted. I mean, every project manager. And what else? Lots of integrations. We got, well, when I'm combining it with other places where I were, we got lots of integrations with internal systems, external systems, with external companies, even with our competitors on the market. What is the situation? So, for this one particular thing, for this practice, we have selected the area of the projects that we had the same suppliers for whole technological stack. We had very similar technological stack for those two areas of the projects that we wanted to automate tests. Those projects were using similar methodologies. Of course, everyone is using a little bit adjusted methodics on their side. And there were the same team locations. Why this is important? Because teams were located in Vietnam, Poland, Hungary, France, and Brazil. Okay, so what is the little bit going more into details? So on the side of open source, we selected 3 projects that were under one application. It's very often in IT that because of some historical things, within one application, we have 3 projects. But it's very important from financial point of view, from client point of view, from end user point of view, and from functionality point of view. On the side of COTS software, we selected one project that was very close to those 3 ones. Sorry. Okay, what next? What is the scope? For the open source, we selected 91 functional areas that we pointed out that it should supposed to be regression tested after each release. For the COTS software, we selected 133 functionalities. On the open source side, we selected 10 areas for smoke testing. On the COTS side, we selected 8 areas. And the team on the testing side. On the open source side, we had 1 tester on board. On COTS side, we had 1 junior tester on board. How many of you have done such comparison when you were selecting automatical frameworks or automatical tools? What is okay, what is not okay, which software is fulfilling my needs, what is not, what kind of software is not fulfilling my needs? Have you done something like this? This kind of decision table? No, okay. So it's something like this. During the selecting of the technological stack is done all over the time. And for those 2 particular cases, it was okay on the green side, on the left side and on the right side. So open source tools and technological stack behind it was fulfilling all our needs. And on the side of the COTS also were fulfilling all our functional needs, what we wanted and what we selected to test. From the COTS perspective, it's one of the software on the top, on my side left, on your side right. So top right corner. It's not some low-level COTS software. It was from premium seller, premium software, and it was giving us everything. It was just doing all kind of possible things. So test case management, issue management, test case recording, test case execution, launching tests in cloud, managing of statuses, reporting, everything what we wanted. And also exploratory testing recording of exploratory testing sessions on client side. So people without any knowledge how to test, they were given software and they were just clicking on the software site and we recorded. And what about open source? Well, in all of open source technological stack, it's looking something like this. So you have some requirements and you're adding additional layers to this what you want to do. So we also add one thing for GUI testing, one or two elements for backend testing. We add something for sending emails. We add something to manage the repository. We add something to launch all of this. and to combine it with CI/CD of our developers. And additionally, we wanted that this should supposed to also help within implementation of Gherkin and Cucumber. Do you know what is Gherkin and Cucumber? One? Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go to the comparison, because this was the stage. And right now, let's go and compare those two projects, how we managed to go there, and what are the issues, the problems that we could face during this kind of activity. First is convincing our stakeholders to use software or technological stack that we selected. From technical perspective, I mean from low-level perspective, from engineering perspective, in most of the cases you are not doing it. You are just, your manager in most of the cases is asking you, yeah, but could you give me some arguments to my discussion with my bosses, to my stakeholders, why this software is so good and we should select it. So you have to do it while you are introducing some new technological stack. Doesn't matter if this is open source or COTS, you have to persuade your stakeholders, so people who have money. Why money? Also on our open source side, we'll see in a minute. Licenses. So open source. You could think all is free. No. There are several types of open source license types. And in many cases, you could use those kind of software only for your personal, I mean, not company things. Or, for example, you could use it only to the limit of 10 users by using it on a free site. If you will go over this limit, 10 users, 10 requests, 10 emails, or 100, doesn't matter, some kind of volume you have to, if you will reach out some kind of volume, you will just lost the open source kind of license, so you have to buy it. You have to check it before you will implement it. Why? Because if you will not do it and you will see issue like this during your life, during the production implementation, you will have to convince one more time your stakeholders to spend money. And on the side of the COTS software, so the software on the shelf, there are various types of licenses. There is license only for user per 1 year. There is license for anybody, but for 1 year. And I mean, one license for anybody, just floating license. But also you could face license for 3 years. So you have to find project that will say to you, yes, Łukasz, yes, anybody of you, you could buy this software, but and we will support financing of it for 3 years. Who's from you was working for a project that was lasting more than 3 years? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so something like 30%. But you have to convince stakeholders of this project on the early stages of the life cycle of the project to spend additional money on the beginning, and to say on the beginning, when in most of the cases you don't know that, and project managers or stakeholders don't know how much time the project will last. So this is only some examples of the issues that you can encounter while you are implementing COTS software and open source software from the license point of view. Team. Because someone have to do those kind of tests. Because when you will just build everything, or you will draw everything how it should supposed to look like, you have to build a team who will do the job. So on one side we have open source, it's your left. On other side we have COTS software. What I managed to do. So let's start from my left, so COTS software. On the COTS software side, I had a person from a street, literally. It was junior tester, who I just taken because he got the business knowledge, domain knowledge. He was working on this project for 3 months before we introduced COTS software within it. He received 2 weeks training, taking him out from a project, but for those 2 weeks, and doing only training on this software, because you have to learn the tool. On other side, on open source side, well, you have to get superheroes. In the terms, you have to get unicorns. Because software engineers, automation software developers, well, not many of them will build for you automatic testing framework, open source, on a full layer, which will do everything. I met 3 or 4 guys like this who could, firstly, arrange something like this. Secondly, go into deep, set everything on servers, start running, in the terms start to writing those tests, and showing the direction to others, how it's going further. So we have to get superheroes, unicorns, like you said before, diamonds. And they are not so cheap. Trainings. Okay, so you could think that, for example, on open source side, on the training side, you don't need to train those guys. No, you need to train them in the domain that they will do the testing. Of course, during the time that they will implement your test cases from the manual test cases that you show to them, or the regression areas that testers are doing their exploratory testing, they will have to learn how the software is working, how and why we are going from A to B on the process side from the business perspective. So they have to get this business familiarity. They don't have to know all the details, but they have to start to feel the software. And well, in many cases, you will not have the persons who will do this. You will have to engage other testers, your so-called manual. It's the wrong word, manual, but testers who are doing manual testing, to train your automation guys who are doing the open source testing framework. On other side, on the COTS side, well, the assumption is that you are engaging, the person who knows the testing software, the software that he is testing. And well, we just had to provide to him a few weeks of the training that the supplier of the software is giving to us by free. So the trainings are for free on the side of the COTS software. Next, test data creation. Well, for this part, on open source side, you also have to add some additional modules in most of the cases, some libraries, some separate test elements that will build for you test data. Why? Because for automation, the best approach is to create data, use data, destroy data. That nothing will stay on the server side, on this tested application side. This is the best approach. And on open source, it's just additional, maybe not just, but it's additional point that you have to add to your things to do. And how it's looking, how those things are looking on the code side, where modern test automation frameworks have just a module, and when you will click through the software, recording your test, and all the map of the testing will be built, it will propose to you automatically the data that you should use from one side, and from other side, well, you just use to do it the tester who knows the application. So he will build the data in the terms, he will just record that he will just record how he is creating the data, and that's it. So there is a plus side, at least this is from my subjective perspective, on the COTS side, from the test data generation side. Maintenance, maintainability. But not only on the side of your software that you are building in terms of your automation framework, but also on the tested application. Why? When the automation is introduced into the projects, in many occasions, it's not from the beginning. The software have to be adapted. Why? Well, because the variables are not stable from the version to version, so it's adaptation on the project or on the process side, because developers just love to change variables. And there are other lots of things, features that they added, but open source tools, well, they don't like to see it. So the software have to be adapted to that you will be able to test it automatically. On the side of the COTS software, so software that you're buying, yes, in half of those softwares, you have to do the same. So you are just inputting issues to the software that you are testing, that, well, our automate tests are not working because something in the software, please change it. So change request, internal change request. But at least other half of those software is already working on it. They are calling it AI. Well, it's not AI, but they're calling it AI. But the software will know that on the previous version, it was this button. And although on the new version, all the elements around the bottom have changed, it's the same button. So it will just click the same place. This is the perspective of the software that we are testing. And from the perspective of the software as itself, I mean of our automation framework, who's from your side here is doing automation testing? He's building or she's building automation testing. One? Okay, 30%, perfect. Okay, how much time you're spending on maintenance of your automation tests? 20%, okay, very good. Anybody else? Okay, so it's very good. On our side, it was 50%. 50% of the time, I measure it on the side of the hours, because, well, it just was so big amount of hours that was spending on maintenance that we just had to measure it. It was different things, test data, or those variables on the software side, or, for example, we just managed to see the change of the version of the Chrome, things like this. And 50% of our time, or, for example, the regression functionality that we thought that will not change, have just changed. So all the things that could happen, happened to us, to the open source team, and it was taking us some like 50% of our time to maintain the code of automation tests. On the side of the COTS software, there were the same situations, all the same similarities, because it was on the same environment, application from business perspective environment. So the browser have changed. There were new functionalities on the regression side that changed, everything. But on this side, this junior tester who were trained to automate tests on this software, it took him something like half hour per day if the errors occur on the run on his automation stack. So 4 hours and half hour. Financing and additional costs. So in the terms of open software, so I mentioned about one additional costs when you will not foreseen that you will extend the open source limits. It's one of the costs. We did it. In our email server, we just exceeded 100,000 emails, and well, we just had to buy additional thing. But all those things that I mentioned to you in the terms training, so you have to train the persons, so you have to pay for the training and for the time of the person who is training. So it's most of the cases is someone from your internal side. So we have to move this person, pay for his time, and let the person to train others. What else? This licensing that I mentioned to you. On the COTS side, it's a big minus in the terms of the costs on the beginning. But later on, you are just not seeing it because you are paying for the licenses and for the junior tester. And on my case, it was the team that we have built around automation framework. It was, yes, this one tester that was testing it before, and 3 unicorns that were building for us automation framework for those 3 projects. So costs of 1 junior tester and cost of 4 expensive unicorns. You have to take it into account. Time. We'll go there further, but it's also impacting financing. On the COTS side, it took us to cover those 90-something areas, regression areas, 3 months. To cover it all, including the training of the junior tester. And after those 3 months, well, we had regression suite covered by our automation tests. On the automatic framework, open source automation framework, it took us 5 months. Why? Well, because we have to build this framework. There were nothing. So server costs, because, well, everything is on cloud, but cloud is not for free. You have to find financing for it. The cost of some additional toys, let's call it, because maybe in some cases you have to provide some licensed server. This was the case on the COTS software. Although we had the server on the cloud and it was paid, we had to provide the licensed server that was physically standing in our office. So it was additional cost. What else? On the COTS side, for example, we had to foresee and taken into account in budget some kind of money for help from the supplier. Because, yeah, the junior testers were trained, but it was junior. He didn't, maybe later on he will have very specific questions. And back then, he would be the most experienced guy, so nobody from the company would answer him questions. So you have to pay for the time of this consultant from this additional company that will just help him. So all of those elements you have to take into account while calculating how much it will cost you. Time. Yeah, I mentioned a few elements of the time. So on open source side, it took us 5 months. On the COTS software side, it took us implementation, it took us 3 months. But on COTS side, we have to add additional 2 months on reading the papers, licenses, because, well, we are buying some software. So the lawyers have to read the agreement. Everybody have to agree to pay this additional money. You have to get all those acceptance and all those signings. You have to add it to this time that you will spend on implementation of this technological stack, even if it's not looking like this. And On the side of maintenance, I also mentioned already that, yeah, the COTS software maintenance lasts 1/8 of the day, and on open source side, it was 50% of the time. Organization feedback. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Why? Because people who know how to code, so developers, automation test developers, system engineers, they are just looking at the software that is recording something and no, we don't want it. Because we cannot change anything there. We cannot code there. Yes, you can. You have to just change the file and there is a code. No, we don't like it. So you have to prepare yourself on those kind of discussion with your tech guys. If you will try to convince them to COTS software. That it's not so easy like open source software to adjust to your needs. From the business perspective, I mean, if you have business stakeholders, in most of the cases it's pretty easy because, oh, Jesus, my people from the desks that are working on business can just click record and it will just rerun automatically whenever you will click on your site, on the server side? Yes. It's perfect for them. So different kind of discussions with different persons, depending on the kind of the software that you are providing or you want to provide or you want to implement within your organization domain project. And what was the feedback? Like I said, people within the organization who were coding, they didn't like it. I mean the COTS software. They were more willing to get the open source software. And people from the business that didn't know how to code or what is IT in the terms they have systems, so they are just using it, were preferring the COTS software software from the shelf. Because, well, it's easy. You are just going to a shop, buying a box, unpacking, and it's working. And it's like this, almost. And conclusions. Well, the conclusions were that both of those approaches are good, but in different projects, organizations, approaches, people that are working within the projects that you are trying to just implement the software, this kind of software, this technological stack from your side. There are pluses on the COTS side, and there are minuses. There are pluses on open source side, and there are minuses. So while you are making this checklist, when you are selecting your tools that you will use, you also have to consider all these additional elements: time, money, additional materials, some stakeholder decisions, even political things. Because maybe, okay, everybody will want to buy this COTS software, so from some kind of provider, but you are working in Poland office, and you are not allowed to buy this kind of software. It's decision of the central. You have to take those kind of things into consideration and put on your pluses and minus side. So yes, no, yes, no. And building this kind of table and adding additional elements like this, then you could start to think that you will make the good decision, deciding if you will just build your technological stack of automation tests basing on open source, or maybe for your organization, it will be cheaper and better to just use this COTS software, so software from the shelf. So from my side, it's all. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much for such an interesting presentation. And I was going to say, we are waiting for your questions, so go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, when you asked at the beginning if I ever had a comparison like that, I haven't raised my hand, but actually I did. I recalled the situation, and I had actually a really big problem how to weigh all these areas that I compare and I present it to the customer. So, because I can imagine that you create the tables, you put maybe scale, low, medium, or high, and all of these are important for one area, and for the second one, it's not necessarily. So I can imagine that each project is different,
Yes.
each customer is different,
Yes.
everything is different.
Yes.
But can you confirm that it is like Gaussian distribution, or there are some areas that are in favor of the others when it comes to the conclusion and selection?
If I would be on the client side that don't have any IT, in the terms my own IT, coding guys, all the software that I'm getting, and in modern times, all the companies, the bigger ones, have the software. So if all the software is given to you from external supplier, and if I would haven't been sure about the quality of the software, because from the past experiences, I would go for the COTS software. Because it's easy for my organization. My business guys, they know the best how to test the software. It will just take a minimal training for them, to just use the software, and that's it. But if I would be some giant with lots of software engineers behind me, and if I would earn my money on the side of the company, my main company would earn the money on the software development, I would go for the open source. Why? Because I can start I saw it at least 2 times, that some companies have created this big chimera with lots of elements from open source, and because those softwares had Mozilla 2 type license, so this kind of license, you have to change just one line in the code, and the code is yours. And they were selling this for the others in the name of, I don't know, this will be the unicorn framework. This will be the Reno framework, and they are selling it. So if I would be the company like this, I would go for the open source because I could sell it outside. Everything depends on the situation and on those elements that I just mentioned. And this was the perfect situation because in one time, one company, one project software group domain, I could use 2 approaches. And I got even the money. I mean, the tables. I know what was cheaper, what was not cheaper. It was just astonishing to watch it during the live. But well, in most of the companies, you will not have ability to do it. Okay, any other question?
Yes, thank you very much. And do we have any other questions in the room? Okay, so I will read the question from chat because, as I can remind you, we have Discord chat on which you can also send your questions. So, does the size of online community, usually larger for open source tools, affect the overall cost?
Yes, because if you are building open source technological stack, for some kind of reasons of your requirements that you have, you will have to add some open source software that don't have those kind of large community. The costs will start to rise dramatically because you will not have the persons to ask. So answering straight to the question, it depends. Because, for example, this community is speaking English and you are a company in Hungary and only your project, your main leader of your testers is speaking English. So you have a problem. It's depending. All is based on the communication.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer. And the last question from the chat. Is it easier to find competent automation tester for COTS or for open source tools?
Yeah, this is the next conclusion. On the beginning, why I wanted to go on the COTS side. In the terms, I wanted to buy a software that will be just used by junior testers, and that's it. I will solve all of my problems. Well, on the beginning, you could assume something like this, but later on, when you will have, after a few years, lots of software that is tested by your COTS software, by 1 or 2 or 3 testers, your business testers that have just started to specialize only within this COTS tool, it's very hard to find a new tester, when the previous one will just change a job because, well, we are living in open world, so everybody can just drop a papers. So it's starting to be over the time bigger and bigger problem. So, but to overcome it, it's much more easier to find reasonable, open mind, fast learner from tester, the person that you will engage as a tester and learn how to use this COTS software, than to engage unicorn that will know everything. Well, and the first solution will be much more cheaper.
Thank you very much for your answer. Do we have any other questions? It's the last chance. We have expert in this room. Let's ask quickly. Okay. I don't see any other questions, so I would like to say really thank you for joining our conference, thank you for your interesting presentations, and of course, for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, everybody.